Hello, Angel. If you have been as fascinated with Britney and her book as I have been recently, then this video is for you. Because I think she answers a lot of questions for us in her book in terms of what was happening behind the scenes. However, there's so many questions left. There's so many questions around how can someone so successful, someone who was the most famous woman on the planet at one point, someone who was such a master in her art and in her talent, how is such an individual able to be so taken advantage of, abused, and controlled for such a long period of time? As I was reading Brittany's book, I noticed so many specific patterns repeating in terms of her thought process, in terms of what she values, in terms of her emotional responses. And so I was like, there has to be something inside her human design chart, which is basically the blueprint for how your energy works. And so that's why I'm so excited to dig into her human design chart with you here so we can further explore a lot of the themes and a lot of the revelations that Brittany shared with us in her book. Who am I? My name is Anna Lacombe, also known as your career guardian angel, and I help you create massive, sustainable success in your life and career. And I do that without you having to sell your soul. And by that, I mean without having to sacrifice your values, sacrifice your time, your happiness, your mental health. So that's why I love the human design system. It's one of the tools that I use with my clients precisely because it's like astrology on steroids. Understanding your chart is like getting a PhD in your unique energetic blueprint. It lets you know how you manifest best, what your energetic blind spots are, how you interact with people in the world, what your unique gifts are. It even gives you clues as to what your purpose on this planet is. So that is exactly what I will be covering today as I review Brittany's human design chart with the context of her book, okay? So that is the lens through which I'm looking at it. I'm looking at what she shared in the book, what we learned about her, and I'm showing you the places in her human design chart that show us where those things are coming from. The manifesting generator is characterized as someone who's very dynamic, makes quick decisions, has a lot of energy, is usually multi-passionate. It usually likes a lot of different things. So sort of the jack of all trades thing. However, society, frowns down upon it and says jack of all trades, master of none. That does not apply to manifesting generators. They're supposed to be allowed to explore everything that lights them up. Looking specifically at her chart, what makes her a manifesting generator is here you'll see her sacral. So this is the womb space, and these centers over here are your chakra system and other awareness centers. And so the sacral over here, this is the life force, okay? This is what makes manifesting generators the energizer bunnies of the universe. The caveat, however, is that we need the manifesting generator to be lit up by something they love, by something that they're excited about to create that boundless, endless energy. And we see that with Britney. She had so much energy when it came to mastering her craft, working as a young child, and then continuing to work even when she didn't have as much freedom, right? So we see that with manifesting generators, a tremendous amount of energy. Also, she does have this defined throat over here, her throat chakra, okay? So this is an individual that has great manifesting capabilities. I mean, look at what she created from herself. America's sweetheart. She literally became the prototype for what so many women wanted to be in their lives. And with the defined throat, we also see someone who has powerful communicating capabilities. And that is exactly what she is as an artist. It's her ability to communicate. She's literally singing. You cannot get more manifesting generator than Britney from this regard. Something also super important for manifesting generators is that their strategy you see right here is to respond. So she is someone with an energetic type that she's meant to respond to things. And we see that in how she creates ideas and comes up with innovative things. She's really responding to a lot of things in her environment. And she also has a sacral in her authority. So this is someone who has that gut level intuition. She gets an instant impact into her gut and she feels whether something is right for her or not, whether something is a good idea for her or not. And we see this manifest, especially in the earlier parts of Britney's career, when she was making excellent decisions, okay? When she was creating her first iconic music video. It's well known that she was a big creative director when it comes to the idea behind Hit Me Baby One More Time. And just generally, she had so many ideas that she wanted to bring to life, and she was lit up by them. And this was also when she was aligned. In human design, what we're really looking for, the reason why we're studying this chart, is to find out, how can I better align with myself? How can I better optimize my energy? How can I use my gifts with less resistance? How can it be easy? And things were easy for Britney when she was aligned in the very beginning of her career, when she had autonomy over her creative expression, when people were listening to her. That's why she had such massive success. She was listening to her sacral, she was doing what lights her up, she had a tremendous amount of energy, and then it came out through her beautiful defined throat chakra. Something else we need to know about manifesting generators: their birthright on this planet is to feel satisfaction, which makes me laugh because of the song I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And I know that's not her song, like she redid it, but still, like, it's so makes sense for Britney as a manifesting generator, because they are here to feel satisfied. That is how a manifesting generator knows they are aligned. And she found so much satisfaction early on in her career when she was aligned. Not only that, but there is nothing more magnetic on this planet than a satisfied, aligned manifesting generator. And that is exactly how Britney became the most famous woman on the planet. She went after her joy, what lit her up, dancing, performing, singing. She boldly expressed herself. She also boldly expressed her ideas. And she felt this deep satisfaction with putting her art out there in the world. She spent so much time in the studios. I was so surprised to hear how much she was working and at what early age. So yes, she was so satisfied in that early part in her career, and that's why she shot up to fame. The world cannot take their eyes off of a satisfied manifesting generator, and that's exactly what Britney was, especially in the beginning parts of her career. So those are the strengths of her design. Let's talk about how Britney got out of alignment. However, we all know that for many, many years, we got that feeling this is not the same Britney, right? Well, let me tell you, what is the worst? If the best thing for a manifesting generator is to do what lights them up and to feel satisfied, the worst thing for a manifesting generator is to feel like they are in any way enslaved or forced to do something, or in any way taken advantage of. That literally drains this powerful sacral energy. This battery completely runs out when it's not driven by what lights her up, but when it's driven by those external sources. And that's exactly what started happening to Britney, especially as she entered the conservatorship. She was no longer able to do what lights her up. Everything was so controlled, and she felt so extremely drained, and she felt extremely taken advantage of. My favorite parts of this book was in the very beginning when Britney talked about being an understudy in the theater in New York, and how later, once she was able to actually play the main role, she actually quit before like some very important holiday performances. And I thought that was so funny because, yes, she ultimately reached that role that she wanted. However, because she had been so drained, because she was behind the scenes, and she felt probably forced to be there, and she wasn't able to express herself and shine, she was so drained, she just quit that. I'm going to mention Britney's other song, Toxic. Literally anything that makes her feel controlled, taken advantage of, is toxic to Britney's design. It makes her unaligned, it depletes her, it basically strips her of her magic. Another crazy story I remember in her book is when she was under the conservatorship and performing on tour, and she was literally fantasizing about breaking a bone, breaking a leg. That's how toxic being controlled and abused and enslaved is to a manifesting generator. She would have rather broken a bone, and she ended up breaking a bone, which is what ended the tour early, which is exactly what she wanted. She could not continue anymore in this way. She could not let her light out. Some quotes in the book that exemplify this is when she said, "I had to make good on my contract even though I was in no mood to do it." There's that sort of feeling forced and running out of the mood. this is what Britney loves to do, and she had an opportunity to do it, and yet still, because it wasn't her own, and she was not free, she just didn't want to do it. Period. Same. She also mentioned many times in the book about feeling like a robot. That is exactly what happens to a manifesting generator when they're not allowed to do what lights them up from within on their own terms. They literally become robotic. They lose their essence. They lose their magic. And this specific quote hit me pretty hard. She said, I knew there was something more inside me, but I felt it dimming every day. Over time, the fire inside me burned out. The light went out of my eyes. That is exactly what happened to this beautiful, talented manifesting generator. That fire within her was put out, it went away from her eyes, and she was fading. And I think we all witnessed that publicly as well. The Britney we knew, and there's always that reference like, oh, the old Britney. Why do we keep referring to the old Britney? Because there's such a stark contrast between when she was aligned in her power, when she was a satisfied manifesting generator that was free to do what lights her up, versus when she wasn't free, versus when she was forced to do things, even if it was her gift and talent and her joy. It no longer became her joy when it didn't come from her own, lit up from within. We all witnessed her performance of Gimme More in the 2007 VMAs. That was, people have called it a train wreck, right? Looking back, it's not as bad as the media told us to think it was. However, that was not Britney. And now reading how she was literally forced to do that, she wasn't ready yet. She had just had 2 babies. She was going through panic attacks. It wasn't what she wanted to do. She was literally going through the motions, and I think that's why the media had such a frenzy with it, because it was so clear that she was going through the motions. But obviously with her human design, what else can we expect? It happened time and time again for Britney. At one point she said, I've been forced into things I didn't want to do and been humiliated. That is exactly what happens to the manifesting generator. That is why it's so toxic, and that is why it drains them so much. Their power, their magic happens when they're not forced, when they're doing what lights them up their way. That is the magic. And I think for Britney, she had so much magic inside her, and she knew what it was like to be able to shine. So then when that was taken away from her, it's almost like that probably hurts doubly as much, because she had tasted what that satisfaction, what her in alignment felt like before, and then she was robbed of it. Also in her book said, I'd started to lose the joy in performing that I'd felt when I was younger. I no longer had the pure raw love of singing that I'd had as a teenager. Now other people were telling me what to sing and when. No one seemed to care about what I wanted. The message I kept getting was that their minds mattered. My mind was to be ignored. I was just there to perform for them, to make them money. Ugh, this is infuriating for a manifesting generator. It's infuriating for anyone, but someone specifically designed to freely be multi-passionate and have all these creative ideas and be so dynamic and to be lit up from within and follow that passion no matter where it leads. It's doubly infuriating. Actually, a big sign of being unaligned as a manifesting generator is when you are feeling frustrated. And you could tell there was so much frustration throughout this book for Britney as soon as she started becoming unaligned. By the way, if you want to get your chart, just Google human design free chart and get your chart. If you want to follow along and see where you might have similar things as Britney. Make this very depressing because there was also moments even throughout the conservatorship where Britney did find her light again. There were moments where she was satisfied. There were moments where she was able to be lit up. One of those moments was her collaboration with Madonna. That seemed to have a really big impact on her, the way Madonna owned her power. And we'll talk about Britney's open centers here, because I think that played a huge role in that, because of these open, I'll get into it in a minute, but because of these open spaces, she is more prone to be impacted by other people's energy, other people's emotions, other people's auras. So when she was in the presence of Madonna, it's like something in Britney was able to shift as well. And she was able to tap into Madonna's power and confidence. So, for example, the song that she pushed for performing with Madonna, similar to the spontaneous kiss in the performance, that was also Britney's idea. It came from her sacral. It was a gut, and she went for it, and it, lit the whole world on fire. When she, as a manifesting generator, is on fire, the whole world goes on fire. She becomes so magnetic, we can't keep our eyes off of her. Also in the book, Britney talks a lot about the Blackout album. She talks about how it felt so easy. And there were so many indications that she was more aligned with her energy and more able to do what lights her up her way. She was able to express herself. And I think that is what really, really helped her. She was able to find more alignment during the Blackout album. And I think that's why that one is so dear to her heart, because she was able to find at least some of her old magic again in that album. I'm going to go into these energetic centers that I've mentioned before. So as I said, she has the defined throat, she has the defined sacral, but what I want to talk about is some of the undefined areas that she had. So the undefined areas are areas where we are more prone to conditioning, more prone to external impact, okay? So I'm going to start here with Britney's undefined heart. Okay, so this is an area where if you have an undefined heart, which I do, a lot of my clients have it too, this is an area where we struggle to see our own worth. We struggle to see our own value. This is an area where we overgive, overdeliver, and we're constantly worried. Am I giving enough? Am I doing enough? Do they like it? So that, I think, is the most interesting thing, one of the most interesting things about Britney and in her book, where this confident woman that we all look up to was actually not very confident at all. And I think a lot of that stems from this undefined heart over here. I think this undefined heart is also part of the reason why Britney experienced so much self-criticism, self-denial, and self-gaslighting. One of the most interesting things about the book for me was how many thoughts she expressed, italicized, to let us know what was going on in her mind, and how frequently that happened, that she would have these thoughts in her mind, but did not express herself. Okay, so that tells me that there was this situation where she was trying to prove her worth, and she was worried whether she would be accepted and loved. And so that's why she did not express herself. This is also where people pleasing tendencies come in, because you're trying so hard to prove yourself so that you could be loved and accepted. And we saw so many people pleasing patterns in Britney's story, and we see herself also referring to herself as this big people pleaser. At one point, she said she wanted to please Justin. She wanted to please her parents. She wanted to please her audiences. She wanted to please the whole world. This undefined heart has probably contributed to a lot of those feelings and behaviors. I think what exacerbated this undefined heart situation is her, being forced to, do things she didn't want to do and not be free. So at one point she said, "They put my fire out. I undervalued myself for a decade." Yes, huge issue with undervaluing yourself when you have an undefined heart. To kind of make matters worse for Britney, and a lot of people have this pattern, I have this pattern too, she also has this undefined solar plexus. Your solar plexus is how we process emotions. So because hers is undefined, that means she's very prone to picking up the emotions of other people. A lot of people who would describe themselves as empaths probably have this open solar plexus, and that is the case with Britney. She felt the feelings of other people. I was so mesmerized by her story of how when her brother got into that terrible accident, and you could tell that she felt his pain. That is an empath. That is an undefined solar plexus, which Britney has. Similarly, it was so fascinating to me to read her thoughts about her father and grandfather. Despite the shit she was put through with her father, she was still able to see that her father became that way because of her grandfather. How insane is that? How empathetic is that? That, I mean, you know what I mean? And like for her ability to tune into other people's emotions and be empathetic is exactly where that's coming from. Unfortunately, because this is not defined for her, she doesn't have consistent energy for herself in this area. I think that's where a lot of the lack of self-compassion came for Britney. Once again, similar to the heart, that self-criticism and lack of self-compassion. I think it's related to this undefined solar plexus. Something that's open would have no gates defined at all, FYI. But what also happened here is when we have this place undefined or opened, we don't want to confront truth. We are very terrified of confronting people, confronting the truth, because we fear the emotional backlash. And that is literally Britney's entire story. She was already receiving so much criticism, so much confrontation from the media, from the world. And then, she did not want to further confront the conservatorship. She didn't want to confront her parents. It took her so long to be able to finally put her foot down and confront that. She was so worried about that backlash. And also, like I said, she did have these people-pleasing tendencies already. Whew. So yeah, it's a lot. So that it just, when you look at her design, it starts to make sense how someone so powerful, so talented, so magnetic could be so stuck for so long. I have two more undefined areas I want to talk to you about when it comes to Britney, and that is here, her undefined identity center and her undefined root. So starting with the undefined identity center, this causes someone to be constantly seeking home, constantly thinking, am I going in the right direction? Constantly seeking love. With an undefined identity center will tend to identify themselves with their profession, with their performance, with their career. It's also someone who might identify themselves as the role they play in the relationship, the role they play in the family. And for many times, Britney was the breadwinner, provider, and she identified with that role. It was hard for her to break out of that. It was hard for her to see her identity beyond that. And I think that, once again, coupled with this heart and solar plexus, contributed to her staying in this toxic situation for so long. It also explains why she describes in her book how when she had her first role in Crossroads, she took the identity of the character. I think that is, that undefined identity center where she will take on someone else's identity so easily. And she was kind of scared of how easily she fell into the character and couldn't shake it off. Also, I believe when we watched her documentary with Kevin Federline, I believe she started taking his characteristics, his identity as her own as well. When she was acting extra silly, extra reckless, extra risk-taking, extra edgy, I think that was also her taking on some of those characteristics of K-Fed. And then finally, and I don't mean to make this like all doom and gloom about Britney because there's so many things that work well for her chart, but I really wanted to give you an idea of what her blind spots were to explain what happened in the book. The last thing I want to talk about is this undefined root. Okay, so this undefined root causes immense pressure. There's like this sense of urgency, and there's a lot of stress involved with this undefined root. So I think that's really interesting for Britney, given that she did feel a lot of pressure all the time, and she also really liked uppers and like energy drinks and things that would increase her energy. It's like she was trying to somehow get ahead of this urgent feeling she had in her root at the very bottom of her being. And she tried to relieve it, and there was probably something where she thought this energy drink or whatever would help her be even faster and somehow get to that part where she doesn't feel the pressure. But actually, with an undefined root, it's typical to just feel pressure all the time, even when nothing is urgent, even when there is no outside pressure. This root will create the feeling of pressure. And I think that is a lot what Britney also went through. Talk about human design all day, but I'm going to stop here. This will be probably part one. Let me know if you want a part two in the comments because there's other things I'd love to tell you about. We haven't even started getting into all these gates. For example, Britney has here in her conscious Venus gate 6, the peacemaker. This tells us that her values, one of her biggest values is being the peacemaker. So once again, there's so much in her chart that really tells us about both her talents as well as why she got stuck for so long. And there's also parts of her chart that indicate what might be happening for her in the future. So if you want me to do a part two where I get into those specifics, leave a comment. And also if you'd like to book your own human design reading with me, I'm also going to drop that link below. I'm going to leave you with Britney's beautiful quote about freedom, because I think it speaks to this beautiful manifesting generator that just needs to be free. So she said, freedom means being goofy, silly, and having fun on social media. Freedom means taking a break from Instagram without people calling 911. Freedom means being able to make mistakes and learning from them. Freedom means I don't have to perform for anyone, on stage or off stage. Freedom means that I get to be as beautifully imperfect as everyone else. And freedom means the ability and the right to search for joy in my own way on my own terms. Interesting, the free Britney movement, freedom. That's another big theme for Britney. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching my first ever YouTube video. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to drop those in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.